Hey there booktube, welcome back to my channel and welcome to A Closer Book. This is the series where I talk about 3 of my recent reads. These are not quite so recent because I fell behind in my filming schedule, but this is going to be a pretty good video because these are 3 books that I really enjoyed or had strong feelings about. First up is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. This is a pretty popular book on BookTube, so I won't tell you too much about the synopsis except to say that it is a novel told in interlinked short stories. It follows an African family through the 300-year history of Africans being taken from the motherland and brought to the United States, brought to the New World as slaves. It follows this family tree, 2 sisters who one remains in Africa and the other one is sold into slavery, and so it follows their generations through this 300-year history. The author uses these 2 different circumstances to trace the very different parts of African history: slavery, segregation, integration, racism, poverty, drugs, immigration, the dichotomy between African American immigrants and Caribbean American immigrants, drugs, broken homes, generational curses, all of that just through the branch it comes to the United States, and comparing that to the experience of the African who remain in the motherland and in some cases experiencing some of the same issues. Yaa Gyasi used a lot of my favorite themes in this book, so it's easy to understand why I really enjoyed it, except to say that the brilliance is not just in the themes, it is in the way that she interwove these stories, in the way that she characterized this history, humanizing each character so you felt like you were alternately in the United States and in Africa at all points during the story. And I think that that was so brilliantly done that it still astounds me that this is a debut novel by a brand new writer. It wasn't a perfect book. There are a couple of threads that I wanted to see woven together at the end, which I felt like could have been done in a different way, but that didn't detract from my overall enjoyment of the book. And so I rated this 5 stars, and I count this as one of my favorite reads so far in 2017. Next up was a nonfiction, part memoir, part self-help book by Daymond called The Power of Broke. And I got this from the publisher to do a review because it had just been released in its paperback format. Daymond is well known as the creator of FUBU, and he's also on a popular ABC TV series called Shark Tank, where he gives entrepreneurial advice to young startup companies. What is astounding to me that Daymond has turned his start in FUBU into this amazing network that he has, because I'm thinking to myself, who wears FUBU anymore? Yes, I understand he started a company in the 1980s that was very successful, but I don't know anyone who still wears FUBU, so where does he make his money from? But this guy is an entrepreneur known in the hood as a hustler. And so in this book, he shares his story and the obstacles that he had to overcome in his life, growing up in a not so great neighborhood in Queens and becoming a serial entrepreneur, starting a lawn mowing business when he was a child and employing his friends, to saving up enough money to buy a car, but instead of buying a car to impress his friends, taking the money instead and purchasing a van so he could start a cab company, to starting his t-shirt business and driving all over the Northeast, peddling his t-shirts, and morphing that into this multi-million-dollar clothing company. I felt like it was so inspirational to read that. But he doesn't just tell you his story in this book, he also shares advice that he has gotten from other people in the business, and he shares that with you. What I really liked about the book is that it reads like a conversation, like you applied for his mentorship program and you had the sit-down interview with Daymond himself, and in the process he's telling you about the obstacles that he had to overcome, the lessons that he learned, and putting you on to these people who inspired him, and that you can also hear their stories and be inspired by them too. I like the thesis statement for this book, which is that there are advantages to being a startup, to being young and hungry and broke, and to be able to see that as a strength, as an advantage and not a disadvantage. I think that there is power in that you can use that platform as a springboard to really just allow yourself to make all the mistakes that you need to learn everything that you can by risking everything because you don't have that much to lose. The book explores that idea that there is power in being young and hungry and broke. And to be able to see that power, I think, is a really great message, a strong message for young startups, for young entrepreneurs, for people who are interested in starting a new business. So I really recommend this book. I like that he addressed different kinds of disadvantages like minorities and prejudices against disabled people and so on. But I like that he didn't stay there, you know, like he's saying, I see your disadvantage, I see your struggle, but here's how you shouldn't remain there. Here's what you should do, and use that power, use that hunger, use that drive. Find that power and harness it and use it to become better and to improve your circumstances. What I didn't like about the book, a lot of the stories that Daymond John mentions in this book are about entrepreneurs that I'm familiar with and know their stories, and maybe that's just from me reading a lot from this genre, but I didn't get a lot of new information from the other people from him, and I wanted to hear more. Like, I want to hear more about his experience on Shark Tank. I wanted him to give me some of the lowdown and dirty from that show. I wanted to hear a little bit more about some of the entrepreneurs that he knew personally, like some of his Shark Tank co-stars or entrepreneurs that he works with from meeting them on Shark Tank. I kind of wanted to hear those stories, but maybe that's for his next book, because in this he talks about the next book that he's writing, and so I understand that was not the focus of this. So there wasn't much that I didn't like about this book. As a longtime viewer of Shark Tank and a critic of his more conservative stance on the show, I have often wondered why he didn't support entrepreneurs more, and I felt like from reading this I understood better his position that maybe sometimes entrepreneurs don't need the kind of assistance that they're asking for, and that sometimes financing a project could actually be a hindrance rather than a help. So I felt like this book kind of helped me to understand that a little bit better, and so this was a pretty strong read for me, and I gave it a 4-star rating. Finally, I read Joshua Ferris's To Rise Again at a Decent Hour, and this novel is one of those books where when I was finished, I wasn't sure what I thought about it. Several weeks after I finished reading this book, I'm still not sure how I feel about it. So this is one of those books that I know I want to reread at some point, because I feel like some of the nuances and some of the layers just weren't exposed to me while I was reading it. Like, I went into this book thinking that it was one thing, and it turned out to be a completely different story at the end. The book is about a dentist, a young dentist named Paul O'Rourke, and he is kind of broke in his life. So we're coming off the power of broke. This is a guy who is broke in his personal life. His relationship with his family is weird. He is single, but his ex-girlfriend works with him. He is a dentist, but he smokes and has this terrible nicotine habit. He's overworked, he's an insomniac, and his religious leanings are weird. He's living in one of the centers of communication in our society, but he avoids social media in all its forms. Until one day, someone starts impersonating him online, and what this person does is they set up these Facebook and Twitter accounts for him, and they're impersonating him online. And it becomes this very interesting look at the dichotomy between who he is and who he could be, and it forces him to start to question his own sanity and question some of the decisions that he's made thus far in his life. So like I said, the book is pretty strange in that it starts off being about these things, dentistry and baseball and relationships and family and religion, and then it ends up to not be about any of those things. Over the course of the novel, we meet and get invested in characters who just fall away by the wayside. So this is not a hero story, because the protagonist can't do anything to really save the people in the story. He can't even save himself. But it is an exploration of thought. It's an exploration of the idea of your history and what you can do to change it, and whether or not you really want to change it. And so Paul is an anti-hero because in the course of the novel, he exposes these needs, these holes in himself and in others, and yet he is unable to fill them. So he's a dentist who can drill holes, but he can't fill them, which I thought is ironic, right? In his quest, he stumbles upon a religion that offers to encompass him, and that offers him something that he's not even sure that he needs or that he can believe in. The author himself, I feel like he summed up his storytelling technique in this quote that I really liked on page 323, which I bookmarked. And it says, "Baseball is a slow creation of something beautiful. It is the almost boringly paced accumulation of what seems slight or incidental into an opera of bracing suspense. The game will threaten never to end until suddenly it forces you to marvel at how it came to be where it is and to wonder at how far it might go. It's the drowsy metamorphosis of the dull into the indescribable." And I felt like that paragraph perfectly summed up what this book was about and how it read. So the book was that. It was about 200 pages of rambling and describing things that I wasn't sure that I cared about enough to really like the novel, except that I'd made a commitment to read it. chronicling relationships that I didn't care about and wasn't invested in, and showing me emails that I wouldn't have read if they'd landed in my own inbox, until finally we stumble onto something that has meaning, but it's so different from where we started out that we're not sure that we understand how we got here. If you ask me if I would recommend this book, I'd say read this book only if you are comfortable enough with your own religious leanings that you don't mind going through the exploration of a self-avowed atheist who is professing his own doubt in the things that he believes / doesn't believe. So even now, weeks after I finished reading the book, I know that I didn't understand everything. The book was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize. It ultimately lost out to Richard Flanagan's Narrow Road to a Deep North, which makes me think that this is a really great book. But I feel like right now for me it's just a hulk of stone, and that as I dig deeper and uncover all these layers, I will find this diamond in the rough. I just need to keep polishing. So I do plan to reread this book. I saw a copy at Barnes & Noble on sale. This is a library copy, and I plan to buy my own copy so I can reread it at some point, because I feel like when I really understand this book that I will enjoy it. So for now, I'm giving it a 3-star rating, with the caveat that when I reread this, I will probably really love it and it might bump up to a 4, maybe even a 5-star read. But for now, 3 stars because it rambled and it took me a place where I didn't know that I was going. So that's it. That's A Closer book, 3 of my most recent reads. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you've read any of these books or if you've read any of the authors, and if you have a recommendation of another book that I should read by them. This guy, Joshua Ferris, he also wrote Then We Came to the End, which is also on my TBR, and I plan to read that at some point, but I'm not sure if I should read that now, considering that I didn't completely understand everything in this one. So if you have a recommendation or some advice as to where I should go next, leave me a comment down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll chat down there. So thanks for watching, and until next time, happy reading. Bye.